Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Welcome on behalf of SAMHSA and SAMHSA Game Center. Today's webinar is presented by SAMHSA's Game Center with the support of SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And our webinar today is Making the Connection, Improving the Referral Pathways to Family Treatment Courts. Our presenters today are Alexis Balke, Judge John Rowley, and April Frey, and I will introduce them shortly. I'm Dr. Melissa Stein. I go by the pronouns she, her. I'm a Senior Research Associate at SAMHSA's Game Center and Policy Research Associates. You'll see a chat box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Feel free to use the chat box to introduce yourselves and share where you're joining us from. I'm joining from Charlotte, North Carolina. Before we start our presentations, I have a few introductory items to review. The views, opinions, and content expressed in this presentation and discussion do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of the Center for Mental Health Services, the Center for Substance Abuse Treatment, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We do have a Q&A pod at the right side or towards the bottom of your screen. And there we welcome any questions in regards to the technology or for our presenters. And we will answer as many of your questions as time permits at the end of the presentation. We'll also be conducting a couple of polls throughout the event and appreciate your participation. When you see a poll pop up, please enter and submit your responses. And you should have just seen your first poll pop up. The webinar is being recorded, and the slides will be disseminated via the Games listserv following this event. We will also notify you when the recording is posted to SAMHSA's YouTube channel. A certificate of attendance is available for download at the end of today's webinar. Please note that this certificate is for your personal portfolio use only, and we are not able to offer you CEU credits. There is ASL interpretation for today's event. Our interpreters for today are Paige Bixby and Dwight Godwin. We also have live captioning for today's event. To view live captioning, click Live Transcript CC, then select Show Subtitles. And just a quick look at our agenda for today. We have 3 speakers who will be discussing ways to improve referrals to family treatment courts, or what we also call FTCs. This topic emerged out of previous work the Game Center has done with family treatment courts, where obtaining adequate and appropriate referrals has been named consistently as a common challenge. And so we'll be moving on to presentation shortly, but first I'd like to introduce our speakers. Alexis Balke is a program director at the Center for Children and Family Futures, or also known as CCFF, and works with the National Family Treatment Court Training and Technical Assistance Program. She provides training and technical assistance to family treatment courts across the nation. At CCFF, Ms. Balke has also served as a change leader for statewide system improvement initiative, enhancing system collaboration to improve outcomes for families within the child welfare system affected by substance use disorders. She has also served as a change leader for the Prevention and Family Recovery Initiative funded by the Duke Foundation Charitable Trust, assisting jurisdictions to advance the capacity of their FTCs to provide more comprehensive family-centered care. Previous to her employment at CCFF, Ms. Balke was the program manager for the Riverside County Family Preservation Court, where she successfully managed AFTC with multiple funding streams, including the SAMHSA Children Affected by Methamphetamine federal grant. She's a certified addictive disorder counselor by the Brennan Institute's College for the Advanced Study of Addictive Disorders, and has a master's of public administration from the California State University, San Bernardino. Judge John Rowley was first elected to his current position, Compton County Judge, Family Court Judge, and Surrogate in 2000, and re-elected in 2010. He has served as an acting Supreme Court justice since 2003 while presiding over an integrated domestic violence court. In addition to his criminal court, family court, and surrogate court caseloads, he presides over 2 specialty courts of which he founded, the Family Treatment Court and the Sexual Offender Compliance Court. Judge Rowley was the founding chairperson of the New York State Bar Association's Judicial Wellness Committee. He's a graduate of Cornell University and the State University of New York's Buffalo School of Law. And April Frey is the Mental Health Service Administrator at the Riverside University Health Center system, where she has worked for the past 19 years in areas of mental health and substance abuse prevention and treatment. She is the Program Administrator for Riverside University Health System's Behavioral Health Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment programs. She is currently focused on CalAIM initiatives and integrated services throughout Riverside County. Riverside was one of the first counties to opt in to the Waiver 115 and roll out the drug Medi-Cal organized delivery system. She is a licensed clinical social worker and a certified addiction treatment counselor with the Addiction Counselor Certification Board of California. She's also a trained EMDR therapist working with trauma and substance abuse. She sits on the board of directors for the California Association of Collaborative Courts. She has a master's degree in social work and a certification in criminal justice. And so now that you know who's going to be speaking with you today, we'll take a quick look at our poll results. So it looks like a majority of you are calling in from urban locations, closely followed by rural locations, and then a smaller group of you joining from suburban locations. We also have a handful of you joining us from Reservation Pueblo or Alaska Native villages, so welcome. In terms of organizations and agencies, we see a good number of you joining from government, policy. Not surprising, many of you, the majority of you are representing judiciary, but we've also got a good number of representatives from community-based provider organizations, public health, a few from academia and research. So thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters to start our presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Melissa, for that warm welcome, and thank you all for being here today. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at. I'm excited to be here today with you to talk about making the connection, both across systems and with families, to improve your referral pathway to family treatment court. This is personally one of my favorite topics to discuss, and also one that we see FTC struggle with the most. We have a lot to cover today in our short time together, so we'll jump right in. I will let you know that I have a couple of colleagues that are joining me today that can help engage with you in chat and share resources. So first, let's go ahead and say an acknowledgement to Children's Bureau, the Administration of Children and Families, and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, who have jointly funded the National Center on Substance Abuse and Child Welfare for over the last 20 years. We want to thank them for their continued support to improve outcomes for families affected by substance use, mental health, and trauma. Several of our resources are highlighted at the end of our presentation, and we hope that you visit our website for any further information on our materials or other resources. Today, we are going to talk about scale. So what is scale? Scale is the percentage of families you are serving in your FTC compared to the overall need. But there's also 4 dimensions or major domains of scale. We'll talk about scaling up, which is expanding access to the family treatment court, scaling deep, which is changing attitudes and beliefs, scaling out, which is changing systems, and scaling around, which is aligning the family treatment court with other parallel work within your own communities and states. We will touch briefly on all 4 of those domains during the presentation today, and we'll walk through a little bit of content. And then we'll quickly get to our 2 wonderful panelists who will provide concrete strategies describing how they took this information and put it into practice to help their family treatment courts get to scale. So this first bullet here to me is truly devastating. Just in the next hour or so, there'll be about 30 children removed. You can imagine that many times when neglect is designated as the condition of removal, that substance use is a key factor. And when children are under the age of 1, we have even less time to work with the family, as decisions about the permanency need to be made very quickly. Additionally, Black and American Indian, Alaska Native children are removed at a much higher rate than white families. ASFA, or the Adoption and Save Families Act, although at its purest form meant to correct many of the issues with children lingering in out-of-home placement, an unfortunate and unintended outcome has caused an increase of termination of parental rights, essentially the death sentence for our families. And again, behind neglect, when a child is removed due to parental substance use, it is the second highest percentage of cases that end up in TPR. These are hard to serve, complex cases. And unless we can systematically and universally identify the needs of the families and get them immediate access to quality services, then we are part of the problem. Parents need enough time in treatment and other services to strengthen protective factors, and this needs to be done quickly as the child development clock is rapidly ticking, losing precious and important time for attachment and bonding. So time to and time in treatment matters. What can you do to reduce the time from when a family is first identified as needing substance use disorder treatment and the time that individual and family begins receiving treatment? This one point of practice makes an enormous difference in outcomes. The faster a parent enters treatment, the more likely they are to remain in treatment. The longer you engage in treatment and actually complete a course of treatment, the more likely the parent and child are to be reunified. That's a pretty big study, along with this next one. Time to and time in treatment matters as well as time in. Another large study found that the longer mothers stay in treatment, especially with a high level of family-related services, the more likely they are to reunify. So bottom line, getting parents into treatment quickly means they will stay in longer and have better outcomes. And exciting meta-analysis found that parents that participated in the family treatment court were 2 times more likely to reunify. We're all here for the same reason, to help our families succeed, to promote safe families and long-term family well-being. So I'm hopeful out of today's webinar, you'll find some key strategies that can move your family treatment court closer to serving the need in your community. Hopefully, you know a little bit about the family treatment court best practice standards. We are not going to dive deep into those standards today. This topic that we're talking about does cut across family treatment court standards and provisions. If you haven't already done so, I recommend and encourage you to download or bookmark this link on your computer for quick and easy access for later reference. So we have worked for many years, over 20 years, in working with family treatment courts and other collaboratives nationwide. We have learned that a multi-level collaborative structure is required for a collaborative program like a family treatment court to run smoothly, address barriers, and sustain over time. For a family treatment court, there must be representatives from child welfare, substance use treatment, the court, and other family serving agencies. And neglecting one of these systems in your collaborative can and will probably negatively affect your ability to achieve positive outcomes and improve your referral flow. So take a look at your team. Take a look at your structure. This slide here shows each level. It involves different people for different purposes and shows those 3 levels of the FTC structure, defines the membership, meeting frequency, and primary function of each level. Most of the time we see family treatment court team exists with family treatment courts and a steering committee, or sometimes called policy committee. Oftentimes the executive committee may be missing. So take a look at your structure. I will tell you that it will be nearly impossible to truly increase your scale and meet the need in your community if you do not have this structure. Has the collaborative structure been composed of stakeholders in your family treatment court? If not, that's a great first step. Do your core members agree on a shared mission? And have roles and responsibilities been identified? If you take nothing out of this, I hope that you go back and really look at your structure to see if you have the right people in place, the right agencies And if you want to hear more about building your collaborative capacity, we have a 7-part series for you that focuses on building your team and how to use that team to achieve timely access to treatment and services. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about different types of family treatment court models. There's many different ways that you can look at expanding your capacity, improving your referral flow, and really meeting the need, or increasing your scale, as we talked about earlier. So the most common family treatment court models and that we see here, and this is a little bit simplistic, but this is a breakdown of the common models, both pre and post filing. So the ones on the left of your screen, these are considered pre-filing models. These are 2 models most commonly implemented where the approach is to try to work with families prior to the petition getting filed. The petition is developed and held in abeyance. Participation is voluntary, and there's an administrative review of some type. This really gets you into the prevention approach. The administrative review can look like a court hearing, but it is not on the record. There's no official filing, and it's really just an administrative review. We have seen both a non-acting judicial officer and a judicial officer oversee these reviews. They're typically done every week or every other week at a minimum of once a month. And family treatment courts are coming together, just like traditional treatment court models, in reviewing the case. The team is discussing additional service needs, appropriate responses to behavior, breaking down barriers, celebrating successes, just as a typical family treatment court. There's a range of this approach operating today, and I've had the pleasure of personally overseeing one and also witnessing many of them and their successes. So sometimes this feels a little too outside the box for some, but I'll tell you that many communities have reached out to us and are expressing interest in adopting this approach. And looking at, we'll talk a little bit about it later, but looking at current legislation, policies, practices, all coming together with the best interest of families at the center of the table to avoid court involvement and removal. There has been many different communities that have successfully implemented this type of model. And it's not easy work always, but it's a huge payoff. So we'll move to the right of this slide, and this is the more typical model we'll see. If a petition needs to be filed, the family treatment court should be always trying to find ways to serve the in-home population. This is more common than the pre-filing approach, with the major difference being that there is an official court filing, but the children remain at home. Communities are finding that if a family has access to intensive family-based, family-centered interventions, they're able to safely keep children in the home. And so we have our panelists here today that operate a different range across this spectrum of models. There's many other models out there, so this is a little simplistic, but I hope you can kind of see how we're looking at how family treatment courts can move into prevention. The goal is always to prevent maltreatment first, then prevent court involvement, and then prevent removal. So how can you envision this working in your community? Okay, so we talked a little bit about models. Let's talk about standard 4, early identification, screening, and assessment. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into standard 4, and this is where we're going to focus the next few slides on. First, let's talk about target population, or population of focus. Keeping it simple, family treatment court should have a broad population of focus. If a family has a substantiated child welfare case, reunification is the goal of the child of the case, and the child has been removed. If the child has been removed, then there is a moderate to severe substance use disorder, and the family needs additional supports, refer to the family treatment court. There should be no other questions asked, no other subjective kind of criteria. The concept of voting is an old practice, but we still see it utilized often, all the time today. We should stop voting right now. That's something you're doing, and we should not be using any subjective measures in referring or admitting a parent. If a parent meets the objective enrollment criteria, they should be either referred or admitted, and it's really that simple. I think sometimes we get in the way and our biases get in the way, and that can cause us to exclude families that really need this level of intervention. Here you can see a list of characteristics of parents that studies have shown have equivalent or better outcomes when enrolled in the family treatment court. Still, we go out into the communities often and we find family treatment courts excluding parents with these very same characteristics. Often we hear that they feel like they're setting them up to fail, or that they're potentially, too hard, or their needs are too high. These same characteristics are often the same as those parents that do well in the child welfare, the typical traditional child welfare approach, and they're exactly the parents that a family treatment court should be focusing on serving. We should not be picking who we think will be successful. We're not good pickers. Some of the ones that we think will not be successful do the best, and those that we think might be too hard or setting up to fail and become our stars. This also can result in disparities in access and outcomes, excluding families that need the family treatment court the most. So I encourage you to take a look at your criteria, make sure you are not excluding any families based on these or any other similar characteristics. Family treatment courts are not designed to serve every family in the child welfare system. They are designed to serve families that would otherwise not succeed without this level of intervention. And my favorite thing to say is, remember, if the family treatment court in your community, in your jurisdiction, is the most intensive intervention on the spectrum of services available, no family or parent should be too hard to serve. Because if not us, then who? Sorry about that, slight delay. All right, so to make sure we are being as objective as possible, we need to make sure we are using validated assessment tools and procedures. We see it often where a child welfare worker, case manager, or other professional refers a parent to a particular service or intervention prior to having an assessment complete, making determinations on what a family needs based on their own subjective reasoning. This will contribute to disparities and in access and outcomes for families. April will talk a little bit about how they made some changes in their jurisdiction to make sure that they were assessing first. So we recommend starting the assessment process to identify substance use during the risk and safety assessment completed by child welfare. It's the earliest point possible, using a multi-pronged approach, which I'll talk about in a moment, that relies on multiple data sources and building relationships with treatment to have priority access to assessments with warm handoffs. Oftentimes, treatment prioritizes those in the justice maybe system versus the child welfare system. But the major difference is we have ASFA. We have rapid timelines that we need to make sure that our families are prioritized into services. So this data is pulled from AFCARS, which is a data system that all child welfare agencies have to submit data in. And as you can see here, there's a large variation of how states are identifying and reporting parental alcohol or drug abuse as a condition of removal, from around 3% to close to 70%. So there's a huge variation. And I could spend a lot of time on this slide. But the bottom line is that most people we speak to see this as an undercount. I don't know if you look at your state here and look at the data, and you can say to yourself, does that feel right for what you're seeing in your caseloads? There are many reasons why this data would be inaccurate, including lack of formal protocols for identification, data entry, training. One example is when I actually showed this slide to a child welfare case manager, and their group stated that they could only select one condition for removal. And then during that same training, their colleague next to them reached over and said, you can select multiple reasons by just hitting control on your keyboard. So it ended up just being a training issue. And we know that there's lots of turnover. So making sure that you understand how data is collected and entered into the system is a great first step. So ask your child welfare partners, what does the data say? How are you tracking this? What does this look like for your community? As you can see here, substance use is often missed early in the case for many different reasons. As we talked about before, ASFA does put rapid timelines on our system to make decisions about permanency. So we really have no time to lose. If we identify sooner, we will have better outcomes, pushing everything up front as quick as possible. We talked a little bit about how to have a formal, systematic screening process. We like to call this the 4-prong approach. I'll dig into each of these in a second, but everyone should be using an evidence-based screening tool. Everyone should be trained adequately in what to look for in signs and symptoms. Everyone should be using all the information that they have available from every possible source and integrating drug screening. Now, if there's a yes to any of these, a yes meaning there may be a possibility of substance use as a factor in this case, they need to be referred for further assessment. When we say screening, it's just that. There we go. Sorry about that. If we say screening, it's just that. All it is saying that it is more in-depth assessment needed. Some of the most common screening tools are UNCOPE, GAIN, Audit, CAGE, and the best practice really is to have these questions integrated into the risk and safety assessment completed by child welfare. It's not just handing a form over to the parent. It's not reading the questions as they are, but using motivational interviewing techniques and integrating it into the risk and safety assessment that's already taking place. It's also very common for social workers and other non-treatment professionals to not have adequate training on signs and symptoms and what to look for. It's easy for our own biases or personal history to play a significant role in this process. This is a great tool, one that many jurisdictions are integrating into their orientation, into their process, that helps those that don't feel like they have adequate training or understanding of substance use and what to look for. We have a lot of other resources for non-treatment professionals to gain more education about substance use and its effect on the behavior and the brain. But if you feel like your team needs more education in this area, we encourage you to reach out to your treatment providers, have some lunch and learns, or reach out to us, and we're happy to provide some more resources for you. So this is the third prong now, using all of the information you have. For example, if you have a parent in front of you who is there because they were driving under the influence with their children in the car, you do not need to sit in front of them and do the GAIN screener. That alone, that information will show that this needs to be an automatic referral to further assessment. All of the information is gathered, a lot of information is gathered during the investigation period. So making sure you are using those sources of information and sharing that with your substance use disorder assessors will increase the likelihood that the assessment will be accurate and the families will get into the appropriate services that they need. So the fourth prong is drug testing. And drug testing is just one prong of this approach, not the only one. So many jurisdictions that we have seen or worked with rely solely on drug testing as the primary screening tool. Drug testing is a great tool, but it is not as a standalone. It needs to be used in conjunction with a screening tool, other information from corroborating reports, and signs and symptoms. So using a drug testing alone will result in missing parental substance use early in the case. So if you find that you are only using drug testing and relying on that, and then identifying substance use much later in the case, it may be because you're not integrating a formal approach to your screening using information outside of just drug testing. Here's another great resource if you believe that your drug testing policy needs to be re-examined and improved. And this resource is specific for drug testing policies for families involved in the child welfare system. I encourage you to take a look at that one. And again, with the four-prong approach, you will identify families earlier, more objectively, and that will cause a more timely referral to the family treatment court. Here are some examples to look for, and we hear things like this all the time. I refer my clients to the FTC only if they really want it, or I just wait till they're ready. Or I don't refer parents because I just don't think they'll do good. I don't want to set them up for failure. If you're hearing these, you have a subjective and informal approach. So look at your procedures, make sure they are formal, objective, and systematic. And to do this, you have to have a strong cross-systems collaborative structure. So like I spoke about earlier, because we need to change policy and practices within the larger systems in order to identify and engage families earlier in the case, you have to have strong partnerships. You have to have a strong collaborative structure. It's tempting also to want to exclude parents and families that you believe will struggle with the expectations of the family treatment court. We hear team conversations that discuss whether they would be setting up to fail, as we talked about before, because they don't have reliable transportation, or maybe they live too far from services, don't have safe, secured housing, or other characteristics. But some of these characteristics are simply associated with poverty. And research tells us that well-administered family treatment courts are as effective and sometimes more effective with these challenging cases. So those with co-occurring mental health diagnosis, as young parents, those that don't have secure, safe housing at the onset of the case, are the ones that really we should be focusing on for the family treatment court. So we're going to challenge you to consider two things. If participating in the family treatment court has been shown to significantly increase the likelihood that a family will be reunified and that children will spend less time in out-of-home placement and that parents will achieve stable recovery, you cannot in good conscience refuse admittance to families because of characteristics that are associated with poverty. And if you think the circumstances of a particular case are too complex to be managed by the family treatment court, again, where are they going to go? Who's going to manage them? So generally, a treatment court is the most intensive and supportive intervention available, especially for those with complex needs. Here are some common techniques we see in family treatment courts that they use to improve the way they engage families early in the process. We're going to hear from our panelists in just a moment here about some of the strategies that they have used. Look at your model. Are you using any of these techniques? If you are, share it with your peers on the call today. Drop them into the chat box. What has worked? What have you found work or maybe not worked to help with early engagement? One of my favorites is the court-ordered observations for family treatment courts. For every case that has substance use as a factor, they're not getting court-ordered into the family treatment court, but court-ordered to just observe. Because sometimes that can help make a family understand, be able to visualize the supportive nature of the family treatment court, and it's not just going in front of a typical punitive court on a more regular basis. So test out some of these strategies. I can go in depth on this one again, but I want to get to the panelists and hear what they have used for their family treatment courts. One of the most effective strategies, though, is the use of peer recovery supports. This is a great resource here on this slide to help you learn more about the best way to use peer support to improve engagement. If you do not currently have peer support on your team, we highly encourage you make that a priority. It will dramatically improve both of your engagement and retention outcomes. So here's a simplistic, neat tool that we have developed. It focuses at that front end, and we call it the focus system walkthrough. We have a more lengthy tool, a more in-depth tool that we can share with you. But if you're unsure if your FTC is meeting the need, use this tool and help to find out what percentage of those eligible family treatment courts you are serving. And these slides will be available to you, so you can work through this slide, or you can ask us for the more in-depth tool, and we'll share that with you. But I will tell you, to do this, it does require cross-systems collaboration. We talked about it before, but to better understand why you may not be meeting the need in your community, you need to have the perspectives of all the systems. I know I keep mentioning this cross-systems governance structure because it will be very hard, if not impossible, to make any of the changes that you're going to hear today, either that I talked about or the panelists have made, without this structure. I'm going to spend just a brief moment talking about a couple of the national priorities to put some of the context for later conversation with the panelists. But the hope is, with research and better understanding of how to support families in need, comes policy change. And this is what we are seeing at the federal level. We are seeing changes in federal priorities, as well as actual policy changes that change the way our funding structures are. Intervening early has become a national priority. Policies and procedures and funding are now more focused on prevention than they ever have been. So it's important that you make your FTC part of the conversation for these federal initiatives. And we'll focus on plans of safe care for just a moment. Since 2003, plans of safe care have been a requirement of child welfare legislation. And for families affected by prenatal substance exposure, it is a requirement that there is a notification to child welfare. A plan of safe care must be developed to promote the health and safety of infants after leaving the hospital. But as of 2016, there were some significant changes to the law. They further clarified the population to include born with and affected by substance use withdrawal symptoms or fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, specifically removing the term illegal in recognition of the effect alcohol can have on infants and families. So requirement, the plan of safe care is to include both the infant and family or caregiver. So really that family-centered approach. And there is now increased monitoring and oversight. And so April will talk a little bit more about this later as she talks about how they have integrated Plan of Safe Care into their family treatment court. But to be part of the prevention mindset, you must expand your collaborative partnerships and advocate for the use of Title IV refunded to keep children with their parents. Oftentimes, family treatment courts or other courts do not see themselves as a partner when we talk about prevention or plans of safe care work, but they really are. They are a primary partner in all the prevention work within their communities. The Quality Improvement Center for Collaborative Community Court Teams, it's a mouthful, but this was a 3-year project that focused on court's role in prevention, specifically addressing the needs of families affected by prenatal substance exposure. The journey through this project and tracking the experiences of the collaborative courts across the country taught us a lot about the court's role in prevention. So this is another great resource to help you, your family treatment court, other professionals working with families at risk of entering the child welfare system better understand how they can be part of the Plan of Safe Care initiatives and other prevention initiatives within their community. That was a ton of information in a very short time, but I hope it spurred something, it hit something that you feel like you can take back to your family treatment court and test. We would love for you to share in the chat anything that you heard in this short kind of informative session at the beginning about what next steps that you have identified. We're going to hear now and move to our panelists to hear about how they have improved their identification, assessment, and referral process, how they have worked hard to truly meet the needs in their community and increase their scale. And with that, you can go ahead and take down the slides. Great. Thank you all. All right, thank you, April. Hi, Judge, nice to see you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We're not gonna do introductions again, since we had a great introduction of all of us at the beginning, but I think we can probably jump right into some of the panelist questions. So why don't we go ahead and start with Judge, if you can take this first one. What strategy has your family treatment court used to increase the number of families that you serve?
Well, there's so much going on here, Alexis, and so much in your slides. Really a lot to think about. We take the approach that this is the option best for our families. I mean, the families we see are the high risk, high needs, high trauma, very troubled families. We're not cherry picking anybody, but because of the size of our jurisdiction, we're a 100,000 population county. We can take all the cases where substance use is alleged in a neglect petition. So if we're starting from that point, the point of filing, there is no exclusionary criteria. There's no getting out of this. All those cases come in, they immediately come to our family treatment court team with all of the specific team members trained and participating. So from the first appearance on, parents are getting our solution-focused, trauma-informed, hands-on approach. So my one concern about a presentation like this is people saying, yeah, but I'm from Phoenix or I'm from Chicago. We can't begin to take all the cases. Everybody is Alexis will say, we have different models, different approaches. So yeah, if you're not taking all the cases, you're not taking all the cases. But if you're one of those rural courts, there's no reason why you can't be taking all eligible cases and starting from there. So nobody is able to opt out if the criteria opts them in. And the second thing that we do right at the beginning, at their first appearance in front of me, the family treatment court, is set a fact-finding date so that our clock starts ticking. If we don't get this case resolved in the next 6 to 8 weeks with a decision to come into family treatment court, if it's eligible, we've got to finish the evaluations, we've got to do the assessments. But if it's otherwise eligible, then they'll be in, or we'll have a trial, and the case will be resolved. And in this case, and I know it's unusual, I reserve the right to order family treatment court even at that point. So let me pause there.
Great, thank you so much, Judge. And I know that you have implemented and tested a lot of those early engagement techniques and strategies that we talked about earlier. And I love that you really focus on how do we get folks in as early as possible to hopefully not have the children experience the trauma of removal, the families really. So April, a little bit of a different question for you. We talked a little bit about plans of safe care and how family treatment courts have been starting to and trying to incorporate plans of safe care into the referral source expansion, and other ways like that. So I wonder if you could just spend a little bit of time talking about plans of safe care in your community and also any other strategies that you have used to look at expanding your referral or formalizing the referral source.
Thanks, Alexis. Yes, so Riverside has, we've actually had a great relationship with our counterparts with DPSS and Children and Family Services. And so we are one of those courts. I believe, Alexis, you have explained it to me as a parallel court, being that we accept pre and post referrals from DPSS. And so we started to see a fall off in referrals. So we, as the treatment provider, provide many in-house trainings for brand new social workers about family treatment court, about substance abuse treatment and the services available across our county. And so we've partnered in that way. The other way that we have also increased our referrals is we started the plan of safe care within our system also, and wasn't sure how it was going to work or how it would affect our consumers. But our first graduation after implementing it, we saw a father stand up and share how important and how helpful the plan of safe care was in his treatment and how he was linked to so many resources in the program. And so to see that, it was confirmation that we're doing the right thing. We're providing extra resources and services to the consumers that are in our programs and helping them build that relationship with their children and continuing to build that support system. So when they leave us, they had those services available to them and they knew exactly where to go when they were having challenges. And then the last thing, because we had such a great relationship with our CFS partners, we were, and Department of Public Health, and many other agencies across our county, we were also able to, DPSS came to us and said, we recognize that we don't always know the correct level of care to send somebody to. So everybody who is investigated for substance use doesn't need to go to residential treatment. So they came to us and asked us if we would be willing to do screenings for every consumer that came through identifying some kind of substance use in their family system. And we agreed to that. We started that probably about 2 months ago. And we saw that in our largest family preservation court, which is the Riverside area, we were down to 2 referrals when we started. After implementing the centralized screenings, it expanded the referral sources going to family treatment, because we not only go with the referral of or the information the social worker provides, but we're able to talk to the consumer, assess their substance use, family history, their resources within their living environment, resources, mental health, medical needs, all of that to determine the correct level of care. So we can detect, is an outpatient program more appropriate for this person? Is prevention needed? Because we're identifying some risks, but I don't really determine any substance use diagnosis. And then also, or residential treatment. And so we were able to provide that screening, send back the referral to DPSS with our recommendation. And if it was somebody that we felt would benefit from family treatment courts, we would put recommendation family treatment court, and then it's still up to DPSS of whether or not they enroll them.
Great, thank you so much. So it sounds like you went from kind of an informal, subjective process of referrals to something that is more formal, objective, and you've been using the evidence-based kind of assessments to determine the best level of care, or the appropriate level of care. One of the things that I think is really unique about your model, and maybe you can share a little bit, is because you have the ability to serve families pre-filed prior to court petition, there was a huge opportunity for you to expand your referral source to be integrated in that plan of safe care work. Can you share a little bit about how the Family Treatment Court ties into the plan of safe care? Are they a referral source? Are they part of the team? And what that looks like?
Yes, and we still have far to go on the plan of safe care. We've been running a pilot model, and I'll talk about some of the challenges later that we've run into. But with the plan of safe care, we utilize it. We all went to the academy together. DPSS, our medical staff at our medical center, substance use and public health, county council, all of us. And so when we went to the academy, we came back, we worked together at developing this, and we decided to use it. Not only DPSS would use it, but we decided to use it within our system of care. So in treatment, to help families, fathers, mothers, whoever was taking care of the child and in treatment, and develop the resources and build those resources for them inside treatment and outside. And so whether they have a DPSS case or they're just in treatment, we will keep the plan of safe care, but we say it's a living document. It's not something that's one and done. We continue to build on it as we identify needs, and the consumers love it. They get a copy of it, they keep it, and it's always with them.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. And we talked a lot about today already the importance of collaboration. And so, Judge Rowley, do you want to take this one? What collaborations or partnerships have made these transitions possible, have made these new approaches possible for your team and your community?
You know, the whole system, first of all, has to be engaged, but the whole system has to have a mindset change as well. This is really a fundamentally different approach. There's already a number of comments in the chat about hesitation by parents to engage in family treatment court, and that's just the reality. So it's like, what is their experience? What are they seeing? Why should they participate in family treatment court as it's presented as a voluntary program? Their experience historically has been bad. You know, their outcomes have generally been poor. They feel like they've been harmed or they've been abandoned. So we have to have every part of our system approaching these families differently. We need to be led by the families, by their needs. We have to be respecting them. They have to be given choices. But I think we have failed at historically understanding how damaging it is to the opportunity to build a relationship when the first thing that happens is a child is removed. Now, I know we're talking about trying to have kids home as much as we can, but let's go to the cases where the children are removed. That, first of all, that is a trauma that will never heal. And it took me a long time to fully appreciate that. I didn't completely, and I still didn't fully appreciate it, but until I heard a caseworker talk about being called to a scene where a mother was having to have her child removed, and the incredible trauma the caseworker experienced of pulling this child away from the mother. And I finally felt it, more deeply. And so we have to honor that. We have to recognize that. And so this whole system has got to be bringing, a positive and caring attitude towards this, which is, I don't know what it was before, but this has got to be different. So what are the advantages? Well, we've got to have everybody like with their best game on, so that we have parents, attorneys who are fully engaged in family treatment court. They can list for their clients immediately why, what's going to be different. The very first thing we do at court before the removal appearance is talk about what's the parenting time going to look like. Now, we'd like to keep getting better and better at that. We'd love to be able to have foster parents or placement parents present or available. We'd like to be exchanging, stuffed animals and blankets, and of course, parents are in various different mindsets there, but we want to immediately be looking at conveying that your child is going to be safe, and you're the one who knows what your child needs to be safe, and that we recognize the most important next step is for you to know when you're going to see your child next. And so we got rid of all the plans and all the documents and everything else. Like, what's next for you? And from there, I'm focused solely on trying to build a positive and caring relationship. That's my whole goal. I try to avoid any of the shame and blame buttons, stay away from them all. These parents have to experience our system as different because our system is different. So at every place, with our coordinators, with our substance use evaluators, we like, I think most places, our child protective investigators rotate off, and a new caseworker comes in so they can bring more of a supportive role rather than the investigatory aspect of it. But and then you get down to the nitty gritty. Where's your housing support? What's going on with your shelter? What possibilities do we have for immediate transfer of mothers with newborns to inpatient treatment, to long-term treatment? We have shifted over the years in a lot of practices, mostly because of the work from Alexis and her organization. But most parents now, most moms, unfortunately, only now, who have a positive tox baby and who need long-term treatment, will have the opportunity to go to treatment with that baby, either immediately or shortly thereafter. That did not exist 5 years ago. We didn't trust it. We didn't believe in it. And plus the opportunities weren't that great. So I can't emphasize enough, these are people who are disconnected from everything positive in their lives. That's why they're using the meth. That's why they're shooting stuff that we can't even recognize. We can't even test for. We've got terrible problems with tranq in our area. We have to, and they're not thinking straight. So we can't expect them to make cool, calm, rational decisions in their best interest. We have to hit them in the heart. They gotta trust us. They gotta have the beginning of a trusting relationship. It's gonna take a long time. Start with trusting us, and that means exposing to a lot of different people, the peers. I've been there before. Whoever it is, somebody's got to connect with them, and then we have a chance. If no one makes a connection with them, they're not going to show up, and we've lost it from the beginning.
I love that so much, Judge, and your focus on connecting, your focus on decreasing the stigma and shame that our families often feel when they come into our systems. And the one thing you hit on a lot there, but the one thing I want to emphasize that you said is that everyone across the systems have the same messaging around the family treatment court and the benefits, starting at the hotline, talking about the benefits of family treatment court, starting at the investigation. Everyone has similar messaging. Their attorney has similar messaging, child welfare. Everyone has, maybe it's a little cheat sheet, maybe it's something that helps everyone across the system give that same messaging around the family treatment court, so that there's that consistency, and it's really helpful for the parents to truly then understand the benefits. Thank you so much for that, Judge. And April, were there any collaborations or partnerships that you had to make to help with these transitions that your treatment court has gone through?
Well, and I think, the strong collaboration that I talked about earlier with treatment and DPSS or CFS, county council being on board, because there's a lot of regulations that follow each of us. And so having them involved from the beginning. First 5, we have new positions called perinatal navigators at our medical center. And they are treatment professionals that are there to help engage parent or mothers at delivery and during care before they deliver, engage in the conversation. And then, we're blessed in Riverside County, and we do have a robust system of care that multiple providers and levels of care in our system. And then, really the assistance of your agency. We had a great trainer and supporter, Mary Hill, that helped us build those relationships, build the forms, because whether we're doing the plan of safe care or children and family services are doing it, it's all recognized across each of them. And so we can build on each other's forms and identify the work that has been done prior to interaction.
That's great. Really thinking outside the box on what those different partnerships. I heard, Family First. I heard, Judge, you talked about housing, transportation. What are all those different agencies that can help address the needs of our families, and really thinking, like we said, scaling out as well as one of the options for this to help. All right. So as we know, this is not easy work. Collaboration is hard. And I can imagine that making these changes did not come without some challenges. So, Judge, would you be open to sharing any difficulties that you experience in this process, and any strategies that helped your team overcome them?
Yeah, the work is very hard. I think we find it very rewarding. We are the type of people drawn to serious challenges, or wouldn't be on this webinar. So that's not new, but it has to be fulfilling in some way. It have to be effective in some way. So I just want to remind those of you who are relatively new to this process, this does rely on the judge as convener to drive this train. I've got a lot of different people on my team, and I'm not the boss of most of them, but I am the convener, and I'm also the final decision maker on child welfare issues. And so it's a really complex process, and I didn't fully appreciate that until it was reflected back to me. It's like, wow, all these people have different bosses, they have different ethical guidelines, different responsibilities. And I think it helps to say, wow, this is really complex. I mean, it's hard to even think of something else as complex within our communities. I think that helps. It's very important to get the right people. Now, I don't select the people for my team necessarily. I don't tell the substance use agency who their representative is to my team. I do choose the family treatment court attorneys. That is my discretion. But I expect people to be here to help solve problems. If what they're doing is showing us the problems, then they're the wrong person for the job. It takes a lot of management from my perspective. And let me take a step back and mention one of my most important points is that this is a court that must engage child welfare fully. If we don't have child welfare as a full partner, it will sputter and go down from there. And if child welfare is not on board, then it's because they're either not paying attention to the data, they haven't seen the data, or they need a real strong person to come in. I've lost my term. What is our champion? We need the family treatment court champion to go do their work. We've got the research. We're getting more. We've got enough already to say this is what works. Why aren't we fully invested in this? But even with fully invested child welfare like we have to have conversations at the highest level, executive level, to keep things from going awry. It's so challenging. The personalities. Let me just give you a quick example of a change in approach that we had to do that kind of outlines it. We've got very strong parents attorneys. I insist on that. It's very important for the integrity of the program. But that means that if you're getting parents attorneys at a case review while the caseworkers are there, the caseworkers may end up under cross-examination. And many of them feel like they only have to do that once a year at most, and they don't want to do it every week. And it really had weighed on our program. And so we've worked on it in a variety of different ways. And now the current structure is we have 2 supervisors and 2 kind of super caseworkers who come to case review, and they're expected to be fully informed with regard to the cases. And the caseworkers are out in the field, and they're making the connections, and they're not even in court anymore. We have 2 super caseworkers in the courtroom who could communicate directly with people, give us answers. But we had to find a way to shield the caseworkers, to keep caseworkers. And it seems like it's really working. People are really thriving at this. We're very impressed with the casework. I think a lot of our parents' attorneys are very impressed with the casework that's being done. But we don't have it's not incoming shells anymore when it comes to case review.
Yeah, that's great, Judge. And I hear this concept of kind of values come out as well. As you know, we know that this work is not for everyone, and if you're not willing to really educate yourself and understand substance use disorders and mental health and trauma and how that looks on behaviors, and maybe have some of your own biases or values around it, then it's going to be challenging. So we have some tools to better understand what is that dynamic in our team, and the values, and how we see and work with families with substance use disorders. April, you did a lot around plans of safe care, some shifting in assessments. What would you say or was maybe one of your one or two primary challenges, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges was developing the plan of safe care. So once we went to the academy, we were able to see different states, because Plan of Safe Care had always been a state initiative. We were, I believe, the first county that went to the academy together. So developing that Plan of Safe Care together as a county, pulling the pieces that we needed, deciding who was going to be the holder of the Plan of Safe Care, because we wanted to offer it to those that did have child welfare cases, and those who did not. And so because of regulations around substance use treatment, there's 42 CFR Part 2, which states that we're not allowed to share information without consent of the consumer. And so being able to identify the different regulations that drive each department and respect that, developing the Plan of Safe Care, training all the staff on treatment side and child welfare side, modeling it in an EHR, because we also work with the medical center, and so everybody has a different electronic health record. And so finding a way of being able to utilize it and build off of each other's, it's still a challenge, but we continue to move forward. And building trust with the consumers at the hospital or across the system, because fears, come up. They're fearful that if they do this, that it could create a child welfare case, which is not always the case. It's building resources. And so those were really some of the pieces. And I guess the last one, we started as a pilot project, and we want to expand it countywide and to all hospitals, even outside of our system. But that we're not there yet. We need to model it in our EHR, so that a way we can pull the data out and it's not being done on paper. So those are some of the challenges that we have and continue to utilize.
And I know we often speak in a lot of acronyms, but EHR, electronic health records, right? Is that acronym for those of folks that aren't as familiar with that? Thank you so much. And I think, April, one of the things that, just because I have also had experience with some of that pre-filing models, is really getting folks and systems to think outside the box and think about, instead of saying, oh, this policy or this legislature, or this prevents us from doing this, instead flipping it and saying, how could we work to modify this policy or work to address our system to change that, so that we can do what we know the outcomes are showing is best. And so I think that's some of the important work that you all have done as well. So wouldn't it be a appropriate conversation, especially with our organization, if we didn't talk a little bit about data? So tell us a little bit about what data has shown you about how these strategies have been effective, and anything else that you feel like would be helpful for the audience to hear about your use of data. And I'll go ahead and have Judge, if you want to go ahead and answer that first.
Sure, thanks. We didn't really systematically collect data until Alexis got on our back. I mean, it's hard to believe that we didn't, but we didn't. And so we have now for 7 or 8 years collected our data, and we're looking at all the points, not all the points of data, but the essential ones. How many cases are coming in, how many people are saying yes, where are people opting out? Alexis went over that in a slide earlier. That's a great analysis to do of where you're losing people. What are the dropout points? What are you missing? But very basic things that we didn't know, like how long does it take from a referral to substance use agency for evaluation until their admission into treatment? We didn't know that. Now we've only got 2 agencies in town here, and one went to a same day admission program. The other one was doing a 3 part process, and it was really slowing things down. So I went over and threw a fit with them, and 5 years later, they still do a 3-week process. So at least we know. We track how many people are in foster care, how many are in kinship, and we compare our data to families who are not in family treatment court, other neglect cases within our own county. Some of the data that's been, I think, particularly interesting was that we do use strengthening families. There's celebrating families. There's a bunch of similar models of bringing families together. And we did have Cornell University researchers track that for us, the use of it, the effect of that, and the overall impact on families. And they were able to associate successful completion of our program with successful completion of strengthening families. And if you think about those kinds of models, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. When strengthening families and celebrating families without COVID epidemic exist, and we have families coming together that are having meals, spending time together, breaking up into their parent-child groups, doing work together, coming back together, and at least the way it's run in our community, there is a lot of bonding. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of fun. I mean, it really is a celebration, and that's the beginning. Coming out of isolation, coming out of the secret. There's so many secrets around neglect and abuse and substance use and all the rest. That I think that just feeds the hope. This is all, in the end, this is all about hope. If child is removed and they don't think there's a chance, then they're gone. So where do they get the hope? And it starts getting nurtured by connection. And when they start connecting with other families, then we really have a chance. So we keep an eye out for where we can improve our program by how many people are doing child parent psychotherapy. Well, when that's being underutilized. Why is it being underutilized? And we have to get people together. We have to figure out the referral system got bogged down. Whatever those things are. So it's just it's an important tool and an ongoing one. So I think quarterly now we're reviewing our data just to kind of sift through it and see what we're missing.
That's great, Judge. Thank you so much. The importance of looking at data, reviewing it, and doing something about it is really key. And that's where that governance structure also comes into play. We have some tools, drop-off analysis like we saw earlier, data dashboards, those types of tools that we'd be happy to share for those of you that don't already have something in place. I'd like, April, for you to talk a little bit about how you all are using data. I know you talked about having that increase of referrals, which was very exciting. And then you also have a method in which you guys are reviewing data, I think monthly or very regularly. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that cross systems meeting that you have.
Yeah, and thanks, Alexis. That is our joint operational meeting, and that is a meeting between treatment and DPSS to review all referrals that were made during the month in every one of our regions, pre and post tests, 6 transitions through the level of care, because in our family treatment court, they can start in residential, intensive outpatient or outpatient, and then they step down as they continue to move through the phases. We utilize that joint operational, we call it the JOM meeting, every 2 months. And we review all of that, drug testing, everything, what's working, what's been a challenge, identify those pieces and work through them together. And Riverside has recently, child welfare created that data dashboard. And so all of that data will be available. And we're excited about, being able to pull that information when we need it and continue to address areas that need to be addressed.
Thank you so much. And if you want to see examples of what other family treatment courts are collecting, we're happy to share that with you. I think we're going to have one more quick question before we move into some live Q&A, but is there just anything, other innovations or any advice that you would want to give to the audience that is on this event today? Judge, any advice or any other innovations you would want to share with others?
Yeah, I'm just looking at a question in the Q&A where a woman is saying that just can't get, off a dime to get started on this. There's they say the economics don't support it. I think we're getting closer to really good quality economic data. I know that those evaluations are underway, but it simply doesn't make any sense. I'd love to argue that point. She says also that people just don't want to admit that their practices are ineffective. Again, look to the data, look at your slides. This program works, and there's testimonials, the real live experience. My philosophy is that family treatment court is the right approach, not just because our families are doing better because of it. I mean, that's a goal, but mainly is we were not treating families fairly. We were not taking them where they were at. We were not recognizing how incredibly difficult their problems were. Majority of ours are coming from foster care themselves. We're talking about, attachment disruption. What do we say? 20% of removals now are for infants under age 1, and that's automatic disruption of attachment. And this is just the right thing to be doing. And anything else, now that we know how to do this, anything else is just unfair. It's just invite me over. I'll talk about it.
I love that, Judge. That really hit home for me. If you heard me speak, or if you worked with me before, one of my most famous things to say is that the parents in front of us are the children that we failed as a system. And there was points where most of our families, most of our parents had experience within the systems and did not get their needs met. And now are the parents before us that we have an opportunity to really break that cycle. So thank you for those words, Judge. I think that's spot on. I think we know too much now. And we need to continue to try to do everything we can to engage and work within our systems to do that. And so April, with that, last words of advice, any other innovations that you would like to share with the group today?
I think the biggest pieces that I haven't spoke very much about is the centralized screenings. And I believe, treatment is the experts in determining what is the most appropriate level of care for individuals and engagement in treatment, whether it's substance use, mental health, whatever that is. And so our innovations, like I shared, starting centralized screenings, all child welfare referrals come through one person, get distributed to a team that we have in treatment that are doing that screening, looking at prior treatment episodes. They're able to gather more information to determine the appropriate level of care, continue to engage the consumer with motivational interviewing, and discuss treatment, including family treatment court. It's not the one and all, but it is a way of engaging them in services at whatever level is needed. And we can always step up or step down however we need to and is appropriate for the person and the family. And so, working with your child welfare department to find a way to do that and get them to the correct level of care. Because when we have somebody that's put in residential treatment that does not need that level, it's really detrimental to the consumer, and then it also takes away a bed from somebody who actually does need that level of care. So getting them in the correct level of care from the beginning, it is really helpful in getting that family on their recovery journey, and helping them move through that system to build a more cohesive family. And so I think that would be my biggest piece. And there was a question, you know, is there a mental health component to it? And absolutely, we assess all of that: medical, mental health, substance use, and get them linked to the services that are needed for them.
That's great. And that's just so key. And I love the messaging, that making sure that we're really assessing and making sure that we're getting our families into the right services, and not to make assumptions, or to, I like to say, eliminate the R word from your language. That word is resistance. Don't use that word. If there is resistance that you feel it's coming from somewhere. And so there's a need that's maybe unaddressed. There's trauma history that maybe hasn't been addressed. And so try to think outside the box and not let your team just think about using the word, oh, they're just resistant. Dig deeper, dig further. That's really that's the exciting part of our work. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for Q&A. And I think I'm turning it back to you, Melissa.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to say thanks so much to our two panelists, but also our moderator, Alexis, and the presentation she provided. We do have a little bit of time for a few more questions. And one we wanted to start with was, there was a question that came in saying, can any of you address situations where your programs have needed to collaborate with both county child welfare and Indian child welfare systems? And so I wanted to pitch that to Alexis and see if she wanted to respond to that. And then if any of the other two presenters have something you want to add, feel free to do so. Alexis?
Yeah, sure. It's such a great question. And I think we are really improving the way that we're trying to work together and collaborate differently on behalf of tribal families. So one huge thing is to understand and know what different tribes and different tribal communities you have around you and near you, and find ways to build relationships and have them on, and having them as part of a primary partner on your governance structure and your policy meetings is a great first step. There are different models of collaboration. We have heard of ICWA courts, where that is a specific model, as well as joint jurisdiction treatment courts. And then last, of course, there's family healing to wellness courts. And so there are different models out there of ways that they've collaborated. And we do have some resources. We also partner with the Tribal Law and Policy Institute on many of our technical assistance to tribal communities. And so if you feel like you would want to reach out to us, we can talk through that and share some resources. But there are a lot of different models, but seeing them as a partner is first and foremost, and bringing them as part of the collaborative structure. I don't know if either Judge or April have any experience.
No, I'm sorry,
yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
At this time, we continue to try to expand treatment that really provides more culturally attentive services for our tribal communities. So we do participate in our Tribal Alliance meetings and have a Tribal Alliance subcommittee for substance abuse prevention and treatment programs, because we really want to bring the services to our tribal communities that help in their wellness and their recovery. And so we just signed a new provider on with Riverside County that provides some of that, but we're not stopping there. We continue to try to partner with our Indian health programs and communities across the county. So
Great. Thank you for that, April.
Another question that came in was regarding defense attorneys, and we know that in many jurisdictions, defense attorneys have a lot of power or say in terms of referrals. So one participant said, defense attorneys can block any referral in our county. How have defense attorneys responded to some of these ideas presented here today? And so, once again, Alexis, I just want to pitch this to you. You know, are you aware of how defense attorneys may react to some of these strategies? And then, certainly, Judge Rowley and Ms. Frey, feel free to contribute as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is another one of our kind of top TA requests that we get is attorneys can, like you said, can be the biggest blockers, but they can also be the biggest advocates. And really being able to have them part of the team, part of the process, helping understand what the definition of a win is for our families. If our families need services and need support so that they never have to come back to the child welfare system, and we're trying to get the case dismissed knowing that, then that's not really in the best interest of our families. So it's a different shift in understanding what the win is for cases in the child welfare system in the dependency court. So we do have a lot of resources where we that are specific to the roles of attorneys and advocacy for attorneys and those pieces around family treatment courts that I can share with you. I saw a judge unmute, so I'm thinking you might have even a more concrete example that you could share of how you experience it.
You know, it's of course it's a major issue, and it's a structural issue too, because if your court is set up so that any parent who's going to be referred to family treatment court is represented by any defense attorney, then it'd be extremely difficult to get real buy-in, because you might have 10 or 20 or 30 or however many. I mean, depending on the side of your jurisdiction, it is much more effective if you can have dedicated family treatment court attorneys. Now, our attorneys don't exclusively do family treatment court, but there's 3 primary attorneys who handle all of the parents' representation. But once you've got that experience, then they can answer all the questions. And I rely on them and say, look, talk to your attorney. She's very good. He's very good. He knows what he's doing. I really try to encourage that relationship. But the shouldn't use the term, but that knee-jerk reaction of like, no, really is a lack of understanding. It's a lack of perspective. We're really not talking about whether or not you can get a statement suppressed where a defense attorney has an ethical obligation to, represent their clients. If you've got good being within the context of this, if you have good, solid child welfare legal work, then these are solid neglect cases. And so if you want to challenge it, that's fine. We'll have a trial, and then your client will be adjudicated to have neglected their child, and we'll go from there. So we're back to having to be able to articulate and demonstrate the advantages of participating in a program like this. And structurally, it's going to be a loser if you can't narrow down the number of attorneys that you have to convince.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Judge. And one of the things that there's been a huge push for is looking at how we can get quality legal representation earlier in the case prior to removal, and bringing down Title 40 funds to pay for that. And so that's really showing how we're trying to move upstream, but also use that quality legal representation in the best way. And these are these examples of all these different ways that scaling is not just about getting more referrals, but scaling out, aligning with other initiatives, scaling deep around values. Very, very great stuff.
Thank you for that. And I think I'm going to do one last question quickly, and then we'll move into some of our closing slides and share the participation certificate to you all. So one person shared, and from what I gather from the question, they're losing participants between they're admitted into the program, but before they show up to that first hearing. So it sounds like they have people who are interested, but then they drop out even before they come to that first hearing. So one strategy I heard that might help with that is ordering potential participants to go and observe that treatment court to see in advance what that might look like. Any other strategies to help with that, catching people between that admission to the first hearing?
Yeah, a couple of strategies, and then I'll see if April or Judge have anything to add. Making sure that you have some type of phase at the very beginning, we call it maybe orientation phase, where it's non-punitive. It never should be punitive no matter what through the family treatment court, but it feels like nothing but support as long as you just show up for the first 30 days. And that's the only expectation, because I think what happens oftentimes at the initial stage is that we get all this information about a family treatment court, all of the phases, the sanctions, incentives, responses to behavior, all these things that happen, and it's scary. It's hard to put your hand around or wrap your head around, and it sounds hard. And so maybe the easier route is, it is not showing up. But if we can really just say one step at a time, don't go over all that with them on the very first day. Have them sign the appropriate, what they need to sign, and then slowly integrate all of that as they're starting to go into early remission and stopping use of drugs. The other thing is making sure if they're not already in treatment already, and we're putting expectations on them as if they're getting treatment for their disease, then that is on us, because they're getting no treatment for the disease. And so we need to make sure that we're getting treatment early, that it's effective, and that we're using those engagement strategies like peer support and others. But I would look at your data and try to see, where along that line is it at that point, is it before that point, and try to break down that process.
Yeah, and then to add, I think we're all going to see, some of that happen. But we have implemented and I've saw many comments in our chat area about peer services. So utilizing peer support services and family advocates, which is a peer service or level that really focuses on the families and the partners and all of the other people that are involved in that person's life, and engaging them in the treatment also has helped.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you all.
And and the judge, he dropped some comments in the Q&A. So if you want to visit that and see his remarks there, I want to just say thank you so much to April, Judge, Alexis, for your presentations today, for the helpful information you've shared. I know that our listeners are going to walk away with lots of ideas and strategies to work towards implementing. If we can move to the next slide, I'll get some of our closing remarks completed. Here is the certificate of attendance for those of you interested. And once again, for your personal use, and shortly you should see, we're going to have a link drop down into the chat where you can click and download this certificate. So stay tuned for that. We also just had a poll pop up. If you would like to provide more input and some feedback to the Game Center, feel free to participate in that poll. Okay, so you should have just seen either Andrew or Erica, they both dropped into the chat a PDF that is the certificate of attendance. Click on it, and then you will get some instructions from your computer on how to download that to your computer. And okay, and so we can move to the next slide, please. We also have a couple of links to some other supportive documents. So feel free to access these either in the chat or access them via the URLs that are here on your screen. So you see them being dropped into the chat right now. You can click on those, and once again, your computer will guide you through a process to download them to your computer. And if you haven't signed up for the Games listserv yet, here is a condensed URL. Just enter this into your favorite browser, and it will take you to a page where you can sign up for the Games e-newsletter, learn about upcoming webinars and events that we are producing here at the Game Center. We also produce a monthly a monthly e-newsletter where we share information about programs and topics of interest that you may be interested in receiving on a monthly basis. Okay, and I'll just ask Erica or Andrew to go ahead and drop that certificate back in the chat, because it has floated way out of sight. And I know folks aren't going to be able to find it now. And if you have any other information or any questions for the Game Center, then here is our URL to our website. as well as a phone number if you would like to directly contact us with any other questions. And there it is. So the FTC referral pathways PDF that you see in the chat, that is the attendance certificate if you're looking for it. So we are at the end of our time. Thank you so much again to our presenters for your time and your work in pulling together all of this tremendous information and sharing your experiences. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you to all of you for participating today and joining us for this webinar. Wishing you all a great and a smooth evening. See you next time.
So much. We
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here.